If one virus can wipe out the entire economy in a matter of weeks and shut down societies, then that is a proof that our societies are not very resilient.
Hello, Greta, and thank you for taking the time to talk. I just wondered, just to start, I just wondered, how long have you been confined at home?
I've been home since I got home from my trip around Central Europe, which was, I don't know, maybe 10, 12 days ago.
Many people have been making comparisons between the climate emergency and the coronavirus outbreak. Comparing the speed and the scale of which governments have acted. I wondered, what do you think this current crisis, if anything, tells us about how we need to act on climate change?
Well, first of all, I don't think we should be comparing these two crises because both of them need to be treated as crises and we need to handle them together, and one does not outrule another. But the corona crisis really shows that our current societies are unsustainable. If one virus can wipe out the entire economy in a matter of weeks and shut down societies, then that is a proof that our societies are not very resilient, in a sense. But it also shows that once we are in an emergency, we can act and we can change our behavior quickly. And as long as we have solidarity and common sense, then we will get through any crisis.
And Greta, you made the decision quite early on to make the strikes virtual as a response to all this. I just wondered how students around the world have reacted to that. And I also wondered, how do you keep the momentum going of your campaigning?
It was a decision made by many, and I think the response have been very good. Everyone understands, and that is the most important thing, that we don't put anyone at risk. And I think people have been very good at that within the movement.
Do you worry that this pandemic will be a huge distraction for politicians just because they are overwhelmed, and climate action such as the European Green Deal and other measures, do you worry they will be postponed?
That is definitely possible that climate action will be postponed. Of course it will. People don't want to hear about the climate crisis right now, but we also have to make sure that we treat both of these crises at the same time, because the climate crisis will not go away.
From the start, you've always spoken about the science. You repeatedly quote sections directly from the IPCC special report on global warming of 1.5. It might seem obvious, I guess, to you, but could you just explain for our readers why that is? Why has that been something you've always done, to go direct to the science?
Because this is pure science. It's not a political crisis. It's a scientific emergency, and it's not something that you can have different opinions in. It's just pure science, and it's, in that sense, it's very much black and white. So that's why I always go back to the science, because that is the root of this course, and we need to get out of this, and also to realize the problem. We need to go back to the basic science, and because if we don't take the science into account, if we continue to exclude the science from the conversation, then we won't be able to solve this.
Do you think just telling people about the science again and again, like you do and like I do, will be enough to make people act? What else? I wonder what else you think we'll need. Is it also about better storytelling, better art? I don't know. What else do we need to persuade people?
People are, after all, social animals, and we change and we adapt our behavior after. If others are not behaving as if we were in an emergency, then then people are not going to change their mindsets or their attitude to this crisis. So we need to sort of change the attitude to this crisis, and I know I keep coming back to it all the time, but we need to treat the crisis as a crisis, because otherwise we won't be able to solve it.
Are there any examples of action that you think do deserve praise? You know, are there any examples of positive actions that you think are worth mentioning?
I mean, of course, yes, there are happening many things around the world all the time. Many small things, like, for example, where they cancelled the expansion of the airport in Bristol, for example. And when we have these projects like rewilding, and I mean, there are many things that are happening, of course, and so then we also have to remember, if you look at the big picture, then so many more things that are negative are happening. So we need to see the victories, but we can't only focus on the victories, because then we sort of close our eyes to the actual crisis. And of course, there are solutions. There are many brilliant solutions, and we have countless of people willing to do everything they can to help. But what we do not have in this moment is the time.
And just on a personal level, I wondered how you've obviously had a lot of backlash and criticism, sometimes even from heads of state. I wonder how do you cope with that?
When you get such criticism from actual heads of state, then that is really a milestone. That is something you should see as a victory, because that means that you are having an impact, that they are actually, I don't know, they are scared of you, because they want to keep status quo, and you are challenging that. And I think we need to see that as a victory when they criticize us like that. And but also it's just so hilarious when grown-ups like that feel so threatened by children that they feel like they must mock us and try to silence us because we are being too loud for them to handle. So it's very funny.
I wondered if it frustrates you that the media has fixated on you as a sort of single figure in climate activism, rather than wanting to hear from a diversity of voices. I'm thinking, for example, I watched you at a press conference in Madrid during COP25, the climate summit in December, and there were several climate activists on stage from around the world, but all the journalists wanted just to ask you questions. That's not your fault, obviously, but I wondered how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time, constantly, and so it does frustrate me that they only focus on me and not the rest, and also that they focus on me instead of the science, and instead of holding heads of state to account and CEOs to account, then they write about me or my speech, my emotional speech, and so on. But I mean, I understand why they do that, because they have a way to communicate the climate crisis through me, but that's not an excuse for just completely ignoring everyone else and the actual science. And so it is very frustrating.
Okay, well, apologies for my next question, because it's going to be about you rather than the science, so sorry. But I wondered how have your parents been supporting you while you've been in the spotlight?
Well, I mean, in the beginning, they were not very keen on me continuing, and when this started to become more and more global, and by that, of course, that impacted our everyday life, and they were very worried that people would turn against me, and that's a word for my safety, of course. And they sort of told me to sort of step back. But at the same time, they also sort of saw that I became more energized and more happy by doing this, because it gave me some kind of meaning with my life. So I guess that's been something that's been very hard for them to handle, because they see both the positive and the negative sides of it.
Sure. And you've I understand that you've been very influential on them. I wondered how they've influenced you. I know that's a big question, but
well, they have always tried to raise me as to always think of others and to be a humanitarian and so on. And that has, for example, so that is something that has influenced me. And one thing I think their approach to this is very good, that because they never say that they are, for example, proud of me, what I have accomplished. They only say that we're just happy that you are feeling happy, and they don't care about pride. And that, I think, is a very good approach, and a very healthy approach as well. That has also influenced me very much.
Great, thanks. And when you're not campaigning, Greta, I think some of our readers, especially our younger ones, might be interested to know what do you do for fun when what ordinary teenager stuff do you do?
It's hard to explain, because it changes so much. Sometimes I'm constantly traveling and attending meetings, and when I'm home, I've been writing diaries and knitting, being with my dogs. But it changes. But I have many. I used to have many activities besides this, but now time doesn't allow that anymore. So this takes up most of my time, all these meetings, and now in these times, Zoom meetings and online meetings take up basically all of my time. But it's good, because I also think it's fun to organize, so it's nothing that I am suffering from.
And just in the future, Greta, when you've finished your education, do you have any idea about what you'd like to do for a job? I wonder, is it obviously something around climate change, or would you actually like to do something completely different?
All I know is that I want to do something, and I want to be somewhere where I can make the most difference, and try to make the world a better place. But I don't know where that will be. So I have no idea. I just have to see where I end up.
And Greta, just at some point, hopefully the coronavirus crisis will begin to subside. I wonder, what are your plans then? What's next for you?
I have absolutely no idea. You just have to sort of adapt to how the world looks like then, and how the situation turns out to be, and then move on from there. Because only now the world is completely different from how it was 1 week ago, and it changes all the time, so you can't plan that far ahead, unfortunately. You just have to go with the flow and see what happens.